KRM Office 5521, off season over. Looks like that, things is like this. We will take a look at the board, at the TV show, the screen. Brazil 5521, committed industrial crime. So, we will have something on mind here, quite simple, quite clear to understand. And we will make our movement today, and indeed it will be kind of a review of some elements at the Western society. I present this as a Western citizen, considering that we do not have this now as citizenship before the French Revolution, 1789. After the French Revolution, we had a new value as perception and prescription as distribution of power, which is the citizenship, considering the Constitution as a social contract to limit the use of power. And Montesquieu created a theory dividing these powers by functions. And in general, before that, those three functions are kind of led by a unique picture, which is the monarch. But sometimes the monarch acts by abuses, and he becomes, we have a tyranny or something like this. We will observe that before the French Revolution, we had a relation as a servilian relation and feudalism, and the word kind of citizenship do not exist. On 1215, we had on UK the Magna Charta, which was when an individual, a person was questioning the landlord about the abuse against his small piece of land. And on 1789, we had the Constitution. These two events create the perception of law. But as law applied against or in all conjuncture by equality. And this was the main value at the French Revolution. And we will observe that we had in the next moment the Constitution of the United States, which has a preamble pretty strong, and it's a beautiful preamble. They keep this until this time. And one relevant word is the bless of freedom. Because you consider that everybody can be blessed by freedom, because you are all equals, and we have the equality one more time here. And we had the construction of the American society by foreigners that come from Europe, and it's a different flow compared with Brazil, for instance. And we have different types of colonialism, because in America you had the immigrant to establish the property, and they are trying to escape from Europe by the church and a lot of things that they had at that time. And it was before the French Revolution. In Brazil, we had the colonialism as even based on the exploitation of the ground, and to both had slavery. And this immigrant flow, especially on America, that will claim in a very specific moment this equal condition to be blessed by freedom, and you had the equality. understand, got this by something named equity. And we have two types of Americans: the Native American, or any kind of people that had the birth and connection by the ground and by blood. They are native, and sometimes they are kind of connected. They are not native, but in the same way they are American or whatever, because they are connected with the ground, despite do not have the blood. Here is an empty ball. This is the idea to understand the preamble of American Constitution and the constitutionalism on the Western constitutionalism as movement since from the 1789, and have the comparative pattern as forming society on America and Brazil, because the two both are inside the Security Forum, which indeed is named Security for USA Brazil, Brazil USA. But we observe that two both have failures. Inside, from the top, we can arrange this and put these two here and transfer them to an area that will be presented as something like this. Corruption is always corruption. The corruption of my square is the same corruption that will corrupt my line circles by the crossed as line and columns. And here I have my database sigma as matrix of control considering lines and columns. You can take and try to have advantage from Brazil, A, from United States, B. You can take advantage from Brazil, and it's considering the financial economical center as a corporative area, Brazil. I will put as an F, investment, which is the public investment, the corporative investment in Brazil, or the public investment in the public investment system center in Brazil, the corporative investment in America, or have the investment as public in America, the investment as corporative in Brazil. And this is kind of the perception about this research, which allowed me to have this matrix crossing lines and columns as a consequence of corruption inside the corruption system, give me the perception as the most promiscuous variables that will be under the Marshall trial. But I can have this Marshall trial, for instance, against the entire Brazil, against the entire USA. I must have an event or something which will put this clusterization by equity, because the two both are corruption. And that's corruption, they are all equals, because indeed they are all criminals. And qualified by the binary model that we offer, the negative one, the positive one, invalid negative one is so criminal as the 0, positive one. But if you are dealing as corruption and having this reading about corruption, I will not consider maybe this guy here at this procedure of judgment by a machine decision to have maybe a nuclear strike against them. Because the corruption will be the worst type, the public corruption especially is the worst type of corruption that you have. For instance, if you have the economical chair at the greatest economy on West, maybe the globe, as USA, considering all interests that you have inside, for instance, you don't have a large number of American companies on some areas on East, especially those closed areas, except to hide your illegal money there. In this case, you can have this association, but in general, you will stay at your own home by freedom, by the blessing of freedom. You observe that the Phillips curve is something like this. I have my inflation and I have my unemployment. I mean, it's the opposite. I have the unemployment and I have the inflation. I think that's something like this. It's the if the unemployment is higher, the inflation maybe will be lower, as you can observe here. But considering that we are switching all events, and indeed you could observe this, if you have this relation, the unemployment and the inflation, we will observe that our relation that the Higgs model is something like this. I have my investment saving curve, which is very close to the unemployment inflation curve, and I have my here at the investment saving curve, I have supply and demand from microeconomy forming the macro conjuncture as investment saving curve, and I will have my liquidity money curve with the same relation as supply and demand considering the money, but I had structural failures and gaps switching the values of those curves integrated around the globe. Indeed, I had the reversal behavior of each one of those curves. It means if my point is here and my curve have this movement, I will have maybe this movement as investment saving curve, and my liquidity money curve with something like this will be something like this. This was the idea that you could present. Of course, that this will be impacting the relation between inflation and unemployment, and then this curve here indeed will be presented as something like this. And we are kind of coming little by little to that actual higher model, considering the areas as transaction that we have, and we have the competitors at the center. Here we have a zone of free bids, and we can observe this as the vaccine or any systemic vulnerability applied by coalition of two both different systems, but everybody here under the same need. They all need life, they all need health, they all need essential service that is guiding the misusage of prerogative at the institution to have this trust is under the antitrust justice, effort by the audit, considering this independent research, and we are having this by governance, risk, and compliance. This is the unemployment. But you are so smart that you consider that the possibility as use this model with a disruptive event here, with a piece of or period as unemployment, to have the decreasement of your inflation or the increasement to be according with your interest at that time. As you can observe, the tradition that the industry is constant, is part of your history. Sometimes the service, is a season thing that will change from time to time. In the same way, the state is something very traditional that must belong, must continue, it must belong to your history, and the government something that change time to time and sometimes got really promiscuous. You will have this disruptive event. Let's suppose that at this moment here, you will consider the Phillips curve, and you will have higher levels of unemployment to have this pattern as inflation lower. And then you consider that you can have this reversal behavior, but your unemployment like this having a disruptive event here, But you must understand that with a conjuncture full of failure and with institutions fully corrupted, you have no control of your environment, and you can have this clearly by all immigrants police around the globe when the immigrants claim social benefits and the increasement of your failures, and exchange this by the votes that you need to continue your illicit gains by misuse of public institutions in general. The same situation, as you can observe, we are having the physification of two different types of relation between the unemployment And the inflation, the traditional relation is something like this: unemployment level higher, inflation level lower, because people have no money to buy. But you consider that has a lot of illegal and illicit storage and a lot of scams that allowed you to buy things by illusion, even by fake money at the market. Then you have this model here, which is a traditional curve as Phillips curve, and this model here. And the integration of both will give you two situations, which means a sequential program with a higher level as unemployment to set your lower level as inflation, and will be something like this. Then you consider that you can have the increasement of this by a disruptive event here. Or you will have the higher level of inflation that will be compared, I would say, or crossed with the lower level as unemployment. You know, it will be something here and here. And the integration will give you this model here, this pattern here, with this situation here. And if we observe this kind of is very close to this model as the Hampshire oil model. Is this confirmed? Because this is all made by misusage of prerogative inside the institution, wrongdoing at the academic or intellectual effort, considering centers of academic effort that may be very connected with the illegal movement as transnational organized crime around the globe under the Federal Bureau of Investigation Review. As you can observe, we are acting in one very specific pattern, considering the overpriced contracts at the Operation Third Wind as a review from the cases Ulysses. This is all evidence, this entire board that you have here at the COVID-19, and you can have this at the sampling arena for international crime or array as clusterization. The question procedure at the parliament in Brazil, considering the COVID-19 and no events before that are very equal despite do not have the same treatment, and violates the Article 5 of our Constitution. And you will observe that this kind of scenery is using the institutional empowerment and procedure according with their own interests. This is named lawfare. No. And this scenery in general commits industrial crime or any kind of crime as incremental behavior, considering the warfare risk based on corruption that will impact the violation of privacy or something like this, and will change the data that has real things to do not have the consequence against them. But in Brazil, the Constitution says that this is against the institution that must offer those filthy animals inside to be under a trial at the America, and if confirmed, the very promiscuous relation, now they must have a second martial trial. A second martial trial as something that unfortunately will put them all in a unity and single event, and maybe we'll have a nuclear strike against them. Any question, Brazil? Any question, America? Security Forum Brazil USA. Governance, risk and compliance. Audit and research, respect the compliance. Brazil, you committed industrial crime. Consequence, all by law.